Says going live. And it looks like we're live for week one of the OpenFlip course on Flip Classroom. This week's topic is the first pillar, which is block experiment. We have Aaron Sams reading from my left here. Aaron Sams recording in his new recording studio up in the attic, I think.
Oh, yeah.
And when we have Alex here, Alex Perez, who's
Hi, guys.
in Campus Puebla. That's right. And actually participating in the course this time around, so this is great to have people participating join us. And Jen, how are you doing?
I've got a good snow day.
Jennifer Gray as well. Jen's got a bit of a delay there, I think, but we'll see how we go. So this week's topic is flexible learning, so I'm going to try and look to see if we have any other questions, but I'll let people introduce themselves a little bit more. Maybe we'll start with Aaron.
All right. Hi, I'm Aaron Sams. Kind of been doing the flip thing for quite a while. Have co-authored quite a few books with John Bergman. Went from teaching high school chemistry in Colorado, actually not far from where Jen teaches, and was getting a lot of demand to tell more people about flipping, and I'm just doing that now. So I get to travel around and do workshops for schools and school districts about flipping the class. Got to know Ken a few years ago through the conference that we hold every summer, and Ken has since come on board at the Flip Learning Network as a board member and has become an amazing advocate for flipping all over North America, and love what he's doing down there in Mexico.
All right, we'll continue with Alex there.
Well, I'm actually quite the contrary here. I'm a rookie in the issues of flip learning, and I'm a member of the course because I want to learn more about these issues. Right now, I'm career director of civil engineering in Campus Puebla, so I think I have a great opportunity here to make my students feel more comfortable and to advance with what is going on in these later years.
Excellent. And Jen?
Hi, I'm Jennifer Mays, and I teach chemistry and AP chemistry in Colorado. I've used the flip class since about 2009 when I got to visit Aaron in a neighboring school district. And I've been a flipped learning evangelist ever since.
Excellent. I was reading your Twitter profile, Jem, and I saw ChemCom, and I was thinking, is that chemistry comedy? And then I figured out it's chemistry in the community.
Because I'm a klutz. That's what makes it comedic.
Excellent. Excellent. Actually, I was looking at, I read Alex's blog post last week. They put a blog post and a video introducing themselves and what their thoughts on flip class are before they do the course, and then the idea is they continue that through the course. And a reflection at the end, looking back, and I like his title is Renew or Die. Looks like he spent past 10 years not being in the classroom and then came back.
Well,
is that right, Alex?
No, I've been teaching for 10 years now.
Oh, 10 years in the classroom, and now it's the time to renew.
Yeah, now it's time to renew. No. So
one thing I'll ask is, looks like Alex froze up.
Yeah.
So
I don't know.
Last year I did this, and the topic was flexible environment. And one thing that was interesting, I think it was Brian Bennett and Andrew Thomason. I don't know if Jen, you were on that conversation. I know Kate was. We had Kate muted for the first 20 minutes, and we couldn't get her microphone working. And we talked about flexible environment, and I actually learned something about it. So maybe we'll ask Aaron what his thoughts are on flexible environment, since he had part of his hand in creating the 4 pillars.
Yeah, I think the idea with things just being flexible is partly is just letting go of control over everything in our classrooms as a teacher. My experience as a student in my first half of my teaching career was I had to dictate everything in the classroom. Like we decided what I did, we decided what we did when I decided to do it because of some arbitrary calendar that I put together. And what I realized is that not all students were able to keep up with my calendar from a pacing perspective, and some kids were bored. They needed to be challenged more. So creating a flexible timeline by flipping allowed me to create a flexible timeline because I could pace the class by the student rather than by my calendar, because it was that, you know, we did on Tuesday what I decided to do on Tuesday because that's the day I decided to teach whatever it was on Tuesday, but not every kid needed that at that time. So I had an archive of video content to direct students to so they could learn, and then made the timeline very flexible in the classroom. The other side of that is having a flexible space for learning. If the instruction becomes more individualized and more personalized for the students, then having all the students sit at desks, or all the students in the lab, or all the students taking a test, or all the students working on a particular thing isn't a necessary restriction anymore. You can have, you know, workstations in your room. So I had a testing area and a kind of a paperwork area and a lab area, and I had a big, like a 7-foot couch where if students had questions, they would just come sit on the couch, and then if I saw a kid on the couch, I knew they needed help, and I would just go plunk down next to them and help them out there. So I created not only flexible time but flexible space for my students to be able to work in, so that their individual needs were met without abandoning the content, but just like loosening up the schedule and the pacing of that content.
That's awesome. I'd love to have a couch in my room. I guess the disadvantage to teaching university is we don't really have a room other than my office.
Yeah.
And I think I try to mirror that by making sure that my office is very available. This is probably the only time my doors are open. And using things like you can book me so my students come and see me anytime during the day as opposed to set office hours.
Yeah, Ken, one thing that you have there at Tech, though, is some nice flexible furniture in the classrooms.
Oh, yeah.
Things on wheels, things that you can move around, so you can create those stations, you can create those kind of environments, even if it's not your room. You've clearly see the value of that flexibility, and you've built that into the infrastructure of the facility.
And that's actually super important. Actually, one of my classrooms was in this old style one with these big desks with kind of the things in front of the table, and I said, no, I got to get out of here. I can't handle this for my classroom. So I got moved last week, actually, so my students were really happy with that change. It was interesting, Alex mentioned in his video about his students just couldn't stand anymore the sitting and listening to lectures and taking notes, and how that was kind of his looking for change.
Yeah, I think we've been already beyond that point in which a student can sit throughout a 2-hour lecture and can only be writing, taking down notes. I think that they need to be a little more dynamic. Everyone has known pace that they can learn to, and it's our duty as teachers to try to teach them the way they learn instead of trying to teach them the way we used to learn. So that is, I think, what's one of our main deals dealing with flipped classroom, trying to attend a new generation of students that have all this technology with them, that have pretty quick access to MOOCs, to online courses, to different kind of knowledge than we used to. And it's quite a challenge that we have facing forward.
Could I build on that a little bit?
Sure.
Yeah, please, Jen.
Well, one thing I've noticed about flexibility is not just the pacing, but the time that a student can access our content has changed with the flipped class, so that they're not only learning when they're in my space, in my classroom, but they can learn anywhere with anyone else that they choose. So kids might be scheduled for chemistry class during second period, but they may decide to work on it later on during their lunch with their friends, or in another class when they have some downtime, because they've realized now that the learning's not restricted to my schedule, it can fit into their schedule, and that's pretty powerful.
Well, actually, going on what Jen is talking about, one of the main issues that I
have something out for all three of you there. One thing go ahead.
No, sure.
Sorry, Alex, go ahead.
Okay.
I jumped in on you.
Well, what I'm trying to do is trying to make my students. Can you listen to me? I have lag here. Well, I'm trying that my students can use their commute time throughout the day, because we have they have commute periods of 1-2 hours. Most of them are not from the city, and many of them have different spread free hours throughout the day. And I think they can use these time spaces to do something else beyond sitting there and, I don't know, chat with each other, which is fine. But many of them have 2-3 hour periods in which they don't do anything. Maybe they can take advantage of this, I don't know, this space, this time space available to them to go further.
The time between sessions.
Yes, sure.
Excellent. One thing that I was noticing, I'd like to think your thoughts on this, guys, is I'm about teacher. The fact that it's flexible for them, but I'm told that they're doing their homework for other classes in my class, which is cool, and I want them to learn time management. It seems like sometimes I'm the one who's my course is losing out if they can be flexible in my class to do everything in the classes that are not flexible. Thoughts on kind of the danger of being overly flexible?
Yeah, I definitely experienced that.
Anyway?
Yeah. In my class, I experienced that too, where students were working on other things during my class, knowing that they had the flexibility. I was okay with that. Like, I didn't have a problem with that. So the kids were productive. They were doing good work, and as long as they were not disrupting and causing problems, I really didn't care what they were working on, as long as they were working on something, and as long as they were, getting my things done as well, and not just taking advantage of the flexibility. So I never felt that the students took unnecessary advantage.
Sometimes it is disruptive in my class because another teacher would not allow the flexibility to turn in anything late ever. So they would do AP US History before taking care of AP Chemistry because they know they'll get a 0 in that class but not in mine. And then I always get pushed to the back burner. So the students had to learn that doing things because it's a wise choice to make is just as smart as doing things because they might have some punishment or reward.
Right. So I've got a question. I'll leave you here, and I think I figured out what my internet problem is. I might drop out, but I won't go away. How do we get absolutely reluctant and non-autonomous students to actually get on board with this flexibility and flipped learning?
Yeah, that's a challenge because a lot of us left to our own devices will choose to do nothing. I'm a naturally lazy person. If I don't have a deadline, if I don't have someone pushing me, I don't get a lot of things done. And some of my students have a similar personality. And so the nice thing, though, that a flexible learning environment provides is an opportunity to give students some choice and some autonomy. And a lot of students that I found that are unmotivated in traditional school settings, they don't like the fact that everything is dictated for them as to what they're going to do. But if you give them a little bit of choice as to, even just choice as to when and where they're going to learn, that they'll take a little more ownership. But if you can even give them some opportunities to choose like what they will learn and how they will learn it and how they're going to prove to you that they learn it, that even more and more students will take those opportunities. So 75% of my students, diligent students, going to take care of business, but then I always had like the 20 to 25% that would just kind of sit, their arms crossed, and kind of glare at you from across the room. Those are the students that really appreciated the flexibility and the opportunity to choose, and they kind of came alive in this environment. So I found that really helped the unmotivated students come along. But there were still some who flat out did nothing. I wish I was able to reach every single student in that aspect. There's some kids that, I don't know, they just choose not to, and I could not change that. I wish I could have, but I couldn't.
Right. Yeah, I find I really want to reach out to those students, and I think Flip Class gives me more opportunity to reach those students that are completely disconnected, having more time to find them in the room. But that's definitely the challenging part in any classroom environment. Got something to add there, Jen, or Alex?
Yeah, I've really been thinking a lot about the intentional non-learners, if I can steal a phrase. Sure.
I like that phrase.
Excellent. I'm writing that down now.
Really, I've led the horses to water, and I've made them really, really thirsty, and they're still not drinking. So I just focus on showing the kids that I still care about them, value them, that they're not losers because they're not learning chemistry. Just, hang in there, and I love you, man, and we'll figure this out whenever you're ready to work. I'm here. And make sure that they know their value in my eyes doesn't come from the work they produce for me.
That's awesome. I had to write that down.
Yeah, that's Bruce Farrell Morris, by the way.
I faced some problems in my classroom because I teach to two different disciplines. I teach to civil engineers and I teach to architects in the same classroom. And while my course is more civil engineer oriented, is a skill that architects should learn, because their job in the future relies on many of the things that we teach them as civil engineers. But they don't tend to look at it that way. They think that since they are architects, they only are apt to do project and drawings or maquettes and that kind of stuff. And once they leave school, once they are graduated, they tend to look back and see that the civil engineering courses were very important to them. I haven't found a way to make them realize this in classroom. And that is one of the main reasons I'm here, because I have to deal with both of them. I cannot leave architects behind, but I cannot leave civil engineers behind. So I'm planning a strategy to make them maybe some group work, maybe some mixed activities that realize the importance of these themes in their daily work, not only in the classroom.
Excellent. Excellent point there, Alex. Actually, I got another question here from Miguel, Dr. X on Twitter. And the question is, it's not really a question, the comment, especially when they're evaluating, and he puts evaluate in quotes, the teacher performance through teacher evaluations. Those traditional ones might mark you bad, where the students, I think the flexible learners I find difficult is the ones that are really used to, as I think Aaron and John wrote in the first book on Flip, the green book, the ones that are really good at playing school. And those are the ones that tend to be resistant, and those are the ones that are probably the ones, the very few that give me the really bad evaluation. So it says, he doesn't teach me anything, I have to learn everything by myself.
Well, I reading this first theme this week about the 4 pillars, and mainly in the course of flexibility, I found that many of our colleagues think that flipped classroom is only filming themselves on video or video lessons, and that is one of the things that I found more interesting. That it's not only you relying on videos, and that it should be swiped away. This idea of you having to take these video lessons, flipping the classroom goes beyond. And most of our students tend to say these things. Oh, I need to learn all by myself, precisely with the teachers that only rely on one asset.
Did you want to comment on that, Aaron or Jen? The classic that everyone thinks flipping is just about the videos.
Yeah, I mean that's where it starts, but it doesn't stop there. I mean, you can flip, you can make video lectures and then take what you were sending home and do that in class, but you really haven't changed anything pedagogically. You've changed the time and space in which direct instruction and practice is done, and that's it. And that's fine. You get some benefit from that, but the greater benefit is how you use the time that you get back in your class. And if you're not doing anything new with that time or better with that time, you really haven't made any great strides. There was some. It was a study that was done, I believe, at Brigham Young University in Utah here in the States, that they were looking at their flipped classrooms and trying to find out why they were seeing improvements in classes that were flipped. And it wasn't because they were using video as a teaching tool. It was because of the active learning that was happening in the class as a result of using video as a teaching tool. That's where the benefit was coming. So it wasn't in flipping per se. It was in the outcome of reinvention of the classroom time that was that came out of flipping.
And I think I finally reformed some of my resistant students, if they'll stick with me long enough, they stop saying that I'm not teaching them, and they start to say, I get to learn things in my own time and in my own way, and then when we have face-to-face time, they get more out of it because I'm able to sit in smaller groups instead of teaching the whole class at one time, or to specifically address their questions instead of waiting for the entire group to catch up to them.
Exactly. I think some of those students get it when they realize that I'm spending a lot more time with them, and I get to know them, and I know their individual problems much more than I would have if I was standing up the class lecturing at them. Right. And that's the big win there. Here's a question. So it's kind of related to my craziness with abolishing grading, but I don't think it's just that. Carolina's asking from Colombia, when teacher training, how can you help teachers get rid of their old ideas about students' need for grades?
Ooh, that's a big one. This is a transition that I went through as a result of flipping. One thing that I had to kind of wrestle with was, if I was giving students flexibility and I was letting them, they proved to me that they learned. I had to change my evaluation system where if students were not just taking an exam to get a grade, I had to find a way to make that fair, to make that equitable for my students. And that was a challenge. One thing that I moved toward is a kind of a standards-based or a competency-based grading system rather than a you completed all of my tasks, getting a bunch of points grading system. Right. Some students don't like that. Some students, they want to do the point thing because they're good at it. It's something that they've been doing their entire school career. They've mastered the art of that. But just refusing to play the game of points and just not relenting and just saying, look, the point here is that you learn and that you prove to me that you learn. That's what matters. And when people, my students would continue to ask, well, how many points is this worth? Well, I would ask them, how many points do you want it to be worth? They're like, I don't know, 10,000. I'm like, all right, it's worth 10,000 points. They're like, cool, really? I'm like, yeah.
It's over 9,000.
Yeah, it doesn't mean anything, but you can have all the points you want. And they're like, wait, what? I'm like, the point is not how many points it's worth. The point is, can you learn, and did you learn, and can you show me that you've learned? That's all I care about. And once that kind of becomes part of the culture of your classroom, culture of your department, culture of your school, it becomes easier. If you're the only person there, you're the lone wolf, it's a challenge. It takes some education on to the students to teach them that this is the new way of doing business. But I think it's far more equitable, really, a way of doing business. It really puts the responsibility on the student to prove that they've actually done the work and they've actually learned, rather than, I think it's harder to cheat. It's harder for them to be dishonest about it. They have to do it. The burden of proof that they've learned is on the student.
Right. Go ahead, Jen.
I just said it's hard to hide in a flipped classroom. There's kids that want to sit back and keep a low profile and maybe skate by. They can't do it by earning points. They have to learn at some point. And in a flipped classroom, the traditional grading system just stopped working. It wasn't very effective. So we've had to look for other ways to provide feedback to the students about their progress and to their parents about are they being responsible, because our parents want to hold their kids accountable. They want to help us and support us. So communication with the students and their parents has been really important about here's what we're measuring and why. So I think standards-based grading helped me to make some of those transitions, but I still get kids coming to me with, hey, here's this paper, can you put it in the grade book? And I will have to say, I'm not sure how to do that because I don't know what you learned by completing this paper. Why don't you show me what it is you learned so that I can update your skills in my grade book? And at first they were confused by that, but as soon as they started passing quizzes without having accomplished every single assignment, and I said, great, let me just see your assignments, and they have nothing done, but they just got an A on the quiz, I said, hey, that's awesome, you didn't have to do all this work to master that concept, way to go. And they were shocked, like, am I going to get a 0 now? No, you're going to get an A because you mastered this.
Exactly. Awesome. Yeah, I find I've gone through this phases of flip class and then flip mastery and then more open last year, and this year going to a complete abolish grading. And last year, trying to remember the girl's name, I'm passing on me, but she made a big point about how I'd have some required assignments and a whole bunch of optional ones. And in her video message at the end of the semester, because I ask all my students to make one at the end of the semester as a message to next year's students, she said, you really, really need to do the optional assignments. And actually, she probably put another couple of release on there. But it was a really great message that just take control of your own learning and do the stuff that you need to do.
Wouldn't that be do what you need to do?
Exactly. Exactly. Here's a good question coming in. Oh, I was scrolling off. Do you have resistance from colleagues about what you're doing with Flip Class? I mean, traditional ones criticizing your work or style of your classes.
Oh yeah, definitely. It was never widely adopted in the school I taught in. There were a handful of teachers that wanted to learn, but I made a point not to push it on anyone because I wanted them to, want to do it. And but there were some that thought I was crazy, some that thought I was, ruining the school culture. Some of them even said like, well, you're making me look like the bad guy because I don't give them options, and they have to take my test. And then they say, well, Mr. Sams doesn't make us do that, and I look like the bad guy. I'm like, well, I can't control students' perceptions of you. I can do what's working in my classroom. I'm happy to share with you what it is. So yeah, there was some pushback, but that's always going to happen. Anytime you're doing something out of the ordinary, anytime you're doing something that's counter to the way things have always been done, there will be people who say you're crazy and you shouldn't do what you're doing. But so what?
And you, Jen?
I have been pretty upfront about the benefits that I see to the flipped class, and when a teacher says, I'm not sure how to handle this, then my suggestion is, have you considered recording that in a video? Or a substitute teacher's coming in, well, can you record your lesson on a video? Because it's a stepping stone. And I don't care if a teacher flips their class so much as I care that the students are getting high quality instruction and high quality feedback from their teachers. My daughters go to the school where I teach. I want them to have a great learning experience. So whether the class is flipped or not, I want them to have a good learning experience, and I see a lot of traditional methods being counterproductive to that. So I'm less concerned with whether kids are watching videos or teachers are making videos. How about let's make our instruction more effective? And for me, flipped learning was that stepping stone, that jumping off point.
And I don't want to go back to everything being focused on videos, but here's another one from Miguel, that he's getting comments like, and this came up in someone's blog post as well, I think it was Amy's, about doing videos properly, and I have to do them really professional and have an awesome setup like Aaron does here in his attic in order to do good videos, or I just shouldn't do any at all. What do you think about that?
Yeah, they don't have to be perfect. All the stuff I made for my students, I was not using a green screen. I had no lighting kit. We were using a really junky camera. They were not great. I mean, they were effective. They were kind of raw. They were kind of organic, like my teaching was on any given day in my live classroom. These were there to teach my students. These were not something I was putting out for the world. Now, I had other people around the world watching them, because they were out there, but they were made for my students with my goofy personality, and they were not overly produced. I'm making a lot higher quality stuff now, but I don't know if you can see it or not, but even in my studio, I'm shooting my videos today on my iPhone. I mean, the quality of the materials that we have just in our pocket is infinitely better than it was in 2007, when we're using a junky old webcam and a junky microphone. So I mean, for something you already have built in is probably better than things I was using a long time ago. So it doesn't have to be perfect. Something that I often tell people is, do you want it perfect or do you want it on Tuesday? Usually, I need it at a particular time, and it's going to be good enough, and done is better than perfect, generally speaking, with most things.
Well, I have to be able to edit because I sneeze every time I hit the record button for some reason. So you have to be able to edit. But I also think having good audio quality is important in your videos. Other than that, your kids do mess up all the time, so don't worry about messing up on video. Just say, oops, I messed up. Maybe you guys can fix it in class or in the comments for the YouTube video, make the correction for us. Like, give them some power and let them see you be real. Authenticity is important.
The real part in making comments, even accidentally on purpose, is an awesome point. I wore that T-shirt actually last week, the Camtasia. Do you want it perfect? Do you want it Tuesday last? So I don't have it today though. It's too cold here in Mexico, and you guys are laughing. So here's what the.
I want to know how cold is cold.
It actually gets close to freezing here in Guadalajara in the morning, and we don't have central heating, so walking across that tile floor, I'm actually colder here than I was in Edmonton sometimes.
Oh, wow.
So last question I'll leave for you. This one's from Carolina as well. Do you have any questions or bibliography on how to create learning stations in the classroom? So I don't know much about this because I don't really have that kind of setup.
Boy, how to create learning stations. I'm trying to think where... Okay, here's what you need to do. Go into a kindergarten teacher's classroom and observe. A lot of people tell me, you just took elementary school, kindergarten, first grade, and you brought it into high school. And I said, yeah, pretty much. Centers. So that would be one place to start. I honestly can't think of any references off the top of my head.
Pinterest.
I know, Pinterest is awesome.
There you go.
Jen, we got some lists there. I know Troy Cockram and Joan Brown talked about this on one of their podcasts. I'll have to dig it out. I can't remember what number it is, but I know they talked about flexibility and space in the classroom. I think I talked about that last year. So it's probably came out January, February last year. I'll have to dig through the archives or ask Troy. And I'll get that to you.
Things that are self-correcting are important at your stations so that you don't have to be everywhere at once, but they can check their work for accuracy, and they can call you over if there's a misconception or things aren't matching up. Then you can talk about what's going wrong, or, hey, is my answer key wrong? That's never happened to any of us before, right?
Yeah.
Oh, Carolina comes in with Columbia kindergarten's not the same as the States. Well, you get the idea. And I think going and watching other teachers is key. We had a big point about that when we were looking at innovation of the tech 2 years ago, where Alvaro asked us if we had watched anyone's classroom in the last year, or if we'd invited anyone to come and watch our own classroom in the last year. The answer was pretty much no for everybody. And I think that's an important message for everyone to take, is watch other people's classrooms, different disciplines, different levels, as well as inviting them into yours. I'm sure we're having a flip class open classroom coming up sometime soon. And I'll have to announce that when I know what it is. Maybe I'll ask Brian. All right, I think I'll wrap up because we're up on the half hour and I don't want to eat up too much of your time. And I thank Aaron and Jen and Alex very much for their time today. Any last
Happy to be here.
Last things to add before we wrap up?
Well, thanks for hosting us, Ken, for one. I appreciate your work.
Yeah,
Thanks.
definitely. And I think if you've not tried this yet, just get in and give it a shot. The fastest way to learn is just to start doing it. Just try something. An easy way to start is just set up a camera in your classroom and teach your lesson as you've done it all your career. And then you do that for a few weeks and a few months. You now are building up a library. You don't have to flip anything the first year. You can just collect content and then put that out and make it available. And then the next year you can flip all you want, and you don't have to create any content because you just recorded all your live lessons. So it's a great place to get started.
Excellent. And I'll wrap up with one more thing shared from Luis Pena here on Twitter. Thanks for sharing. Moving into teaching models demands a changing culture from professors and students. And I'll add administrators there as well.
Definitely.
All right. Well, thank you very much, and I'll wrap up for today. We have another session tomorrow at 7 p.m. my time, which is 8 p.m. Eastern, and anyone who wants to join us is welcome, or I'll come and wrangle a bunch of people.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks,
Have
Ken.
a great day, everybody.
All right.
Cheers.
Bye, Jen. We'll see you.
Bye.